magnificence of the Livingstone Range. It in and of itself is just sort of there. It's always a backdrop to everything else that takes place. It's just power that seems to come from the land due to that rawness.
It's a tortured landscape formed by the wind mainly, and the wind is a powerful force. There's some days it feels like an evil force, but it's the heart of the land.
It's a wild, but still a very, very beautiful place.
It's the way it used to be. It hasn't changed a lot over the years. It's still unique in its own way, and lots of people come to this area looking for this landscape, for this scenic valley that we have here.
This is just unique, I think, in not in Canada, but on this continent.
These are the jewels that the arts and the outdoors experiences center around. This is the legend. This is the legend that you've got to keep intact. Put a road on it, permanently deform the landscape, and you've got something else.
It is a profoundly beautiful landscape. I think it's, some people would call it God's country, without question.
The Livingston Range, located in southwestern Alberta, is part of the Front Ranges of the Canadian Rockies. It's a famous skylifter that forms waves of rising air well known to migrating eagles. Birds of prey by the thousands have surfed its invisible waves for millennia. The surrounding area consists of public land and ranch lands, which lie adjacent to the North Burmis Road near the Crow's Nest Pass. Here the streams flow clear. Nature's at the doorstep. Wildlife roams freely, and you can almost hear the mountains talking to the sun. This is the land as it was seen by the First Nations and pioneers. But this rare connection to the past is a fragile thing.
If an Alberta mining company has its way, this valley will echo to the roar of bulldozers. And this will be just another view of industrial man rooting up the earth with noisy machines.
When I first heard about the project, I thought, over my dead body, and that's how strongly I feel about it.
My parents started this place 60 years ago. I can't imagine my life not being here, and it is the most important part of my life. It truly is.
And I think what it means as a family unit, we want to keep it and do our best to preserve, conserve, and just protect it from total industry that's going to leave a footprint that can't be erased.
For me, this landscape and this viewscape, it's my life. That's what I've grown up knowing, and it's the future too for me, right? I am the third generation on our ranch, and so I would really like to see it keep being what it is. And I've been instilled in my lifestyle, living the life I live, that I'm kind of a steward of this land, so I feel the need to protect it so that my future generations can enjoy it, you know, 4th, 5th, 6th generation down the line.
This land is public land, part of the Alberta Forest Reserve. It's a vital rutting ground and nursery for Alberta's symbolic mammal, the Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep. These upper slopes of the Livingston Range also contain a vein of a mineral called magnetite. Once called lodestone, it was the ancient mariner's magnetic compass. Today, it's attracting investment and turmoil.
Mining magnetite means bulldozing an access road up the mountain, then stripping away thin layers of topsoil to create an open pit mine 10 meters deep. All this earth moving would be at the very source of Connolly Creek, a tributary of the Crow's Nest River. Those who know the mountain's moods and wild weather dread the effect of stripping away water-retentive plants and grasses from the topsoil. These crazy winds here, gusting 160 kilometers per hour, can tear topsoil away right down to the bedrock.
I think anything that's happening in our headwaters is going to affect downstream users, and we all live downstream from these headwaters. So it's critical that we all care about what's happening in the front ranges of our Rocky Mountains.
With talk of mining in the late 1990s, some local people urged government intervention. In 2002, the Alberta government purchased an outstanding lease on the mountain and returned it to public ownership with the promise it would be protected as wildlife habitat. Imagine the disappointment then when the government turned the lease over to Micrex shortly thereafter.
Despite assurances from Micrex that it can mitigate every problem, the Livingston Landowners Group fears that mining with heavy equipment on these exposed mountain slopes will disrupt wildlife use of the area, and that it will mean noise, dust, air pollution, heavy vehicle traffic on rural roads, and likely increased runoff and erosion, typical of human intrusions into a steep watershed.
To start a mine like this, no matter how small they say it's going to be, it can only be expected to expand in the future. And to expand or even to have any kind of disturbance in a watershed area, I feel is a very scary proposition to the future of Alberta.
People throughout Canada need to be thinking about the balance between development and preserving our natural world. You know, it's not just the water and the air that we need to protect, it's our own sense of wonder at these landscapes. And I don't think anybody can come by here and through here without being uplifted, without feeling like they've experienced something special.
Alberta's rare and nutritious grass, rough fescue, is found on the site and can prove difficult to restore once removed. This mountain is home to threatened species of limber pines and white pines, trees that can live to 1,000 years of age. A range of species, from chipmunks to grizzly bears, harvest pine nuts from these scrubby trees for food.
There are certain places on this piece of land, this ranch, and I'm sitting on one of them, you don't want to touch. You don't want to touch because you'll never ever get it back the way it is right here, right now, ever. When you move up further to the west, onto the base of the Livingston, it gets even more difficult to even consider disturbing the surface and thinking. Anybody that thinks they're going to get it back to the pristine state it is today is a no-brainer. It just is not going to happen.
I have not been able to find a geologist who feels that there is value in the deposits that are here. They find them interesting. It's an old beachfront deposit that exposes along the base of the Livingston Range, but they do not see anything that's marketable in there. And one of them, the most colorful of these individuals, described it as being something that he said wasn't, isn't, and never will be a viable mining play. And he went on to say that even if it were gold, and not magnetite, even if it were gold, that it would violate the sensibility to go after it here on the flanks of the Livingston Range.
The company tells us that millions of dollars could be generated by their mine. Well, mining is a speculative venture, so nobody can really say if the mine will pay off in the end. But there is a proven economy already here in the valley, an economy based on ranching, on home businesses, on tourism, including hunting and fishing, and equestrian outfitting. And that generates money every day for the Alberta economy. When we look at a mountain, we're really looking at one of nature's water towers, and it generates a resource that is precious to all of us. And the thing is, everybody lives downstream from here all the way to Hudson's Bay. So why gamble with the public good, water, that the forest reserve was set up to protect in the first place?
The stewardship of this land is everything if we are going to pass it on intact and deliver to future Albertans what we have here today. And I think the big frustration for those of us living here is that we feel that we, the residents of this particular piece of landscape, acting on behalf of all Albertans, are working overtime to save something that we would think that the province would dive in and help us with, particularly so because the bulk of this landscape is public land.
And it's a privilege that we have to think that we can keep something native, we can keep something whole to be able to pass down to future generations to see.
Alberta Environment has refused to hold a public hearing on this issue. Well, Minister Renner said a couple of years ago, it's not the job of Alberta Environment to advocate on behalf of the environment. Well, whose job is it then? I guess it must be up to us, the voters, to let government know that, yes, in fact, we do expect them to protect the environment. Today, we have the power to turn a mountain into a mine, but we will never turn a mine back into a mountain.
We have only this one Earth. There is no spare one we can use once this is destroyed. So we have to take care of what is given to us. And this belongs not to us, not to the people who live here. It belongs to all people.
It just really seems to me at this point on our planet that if we're making changes, and change is inevitable, that if we're making changes, it should be for the better.
If this mine is allowed to go ahead by the politicians, when your grandchildren and children are old enough to understand and they say, how could you let this happen? What are you going to tell them?